AOC insults Adam Schiff. Sit down, boy. But his response shocks all of America. The air inside the CNN debate studio was heavy, charged with an electricity that seemed to hum through the polished floors and bounce off the sleek modern set. Rows of lights blazed overhead, casting a stark glow on the two figures seated at the center of the stage, each poised in their own way, like gladiators awaiting the first strike. On one side, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the fiery Democratic congresswoman from New York, known to the world as AOC. Her dark hair was pulled back neatly, her eyes sharp and unyielding, her red blazer a bold statement against the neutral backdrop. At 36, she was a force of nature, a social media juggernaut whose every word could ignite a movement or spark a firestorm. Her presence radiated energy, the kind that drew every eye in the room, and millions more watching from screens across the country. Across from her sat Adam Schiff, the longtime congressman and former chair of the House Intelligence Committee, whose meticulous approach to governance and sharp legal mind had placed him at the forefront of some of the nation's most consequential political investigations. At 64, Schiff carried himself with the composed precision of a man used to navigating high-stakes hearings and partisan crossfire. His voice, familiar from congressional soundbites, could shift from analytical to commanding in a single sentence. His suit was charcoal black, tailored and professional. His posture relaxed, but not a single ounce of him looked unprepared. This wasn't a pundit searching for applause. This was a public servant with decades of policy experience and a reputation for intellectual rigor. The audience, a mix of journalists, political insiders, and everyday citizens, sat in intense anticipation, their whispers fading as Anderson Cooper stepped to the podium, his voice steady, but tinged with the weight of what was about to unfold. This wasn't just another debate. It was a clash of generations, ideologies, and visions for America's future, set against the backdrop of a nation grappling with division. Tonight's topic: energy policy, a subject that had become a lightning rod in a world increasingly defined by climate crises and economic realities. The stakes were high, the cameras were rolling, and the country was watching. Anderson Cooper's voice cut through the silence, welcoming the audience and laying out the rules. Tonight, we're here to discuss one of the most pressing issues facing our nation: how to balance energy independence with the urgent need for sustainable solutions. Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, Mr. Schiff, thank you for joining us. He turned to AOC first, his question sharp and direct. Congresswoman, you've been a vocal advocate for the Green New Deal and a rapid transition to renewable energy. Critics argue your proposals are too costly and disruptive to industries like oil and gas. How do you respond? AOC leaned forward, her hands clasped lightly on the table, her voice clear and confident. Anderson, the question isn't whether we can afford to transition to clean energy. It's whether we can afford not to. Climate change is an existential threat. We're seeing wildfires, hurricanes, and heat waves devastate communities, including right here in America. My plan isn't just about cutting emissions. It's about creating millions of jobs, rebuilding our infrastructure, and ensuring no one gets left behind. The cost of inaction is far greater than the cost of bold action. Her words were crisp, rehearsed yet passionate, drawing nods from some in the audience and a few murmurs from others. She glanced at Schiff, a subtle challenge in her eyes, as if daring him to counter her vision of a transformed America. Cooper turned to him. Mr. Schiff, your response. Adam Schiff leaned forward, elbows on the table, fingers loosely interlocked. He didn't speak right away. When he did, his voice dropped low, calm, precise, unhurried, but firm. Well, Anderson, let me say this first. I admire the Congresswoman's fire. I do. Passion's a good thing, but passion without pragmatism, that's a fast way to lose people. Now, I'm not here to score political points. I'm here to speak with clarity and seriousness. He paused, letting that land. Energy isn't just some abstract policy. It's real life. It's the single mother in Houston who needs heat in the winter. It's the pipeline worker in Baton Rouge who's got mouths to feed. You want to talk about shutting it all down overnight? That's not transformation. That's abandonment. We need a plan that builds, not just breaks. His tone was conversational, almost gentle, but there was steel underneath. The kind of steel that comes from a life of navigating high-stakes legislative battles and constitutional crises. It resonated with the room, especially with those wary of sweeping promises. The debate began to heat up as AOC fired back, her voice rising slightly, but still controlled. Mr. Schiff, with all due respect, that's the kind of thinking that's kept us stuck for decades. We can't keep kicking the can down the road while our planet chokes. The Green New Deal isn't just a dream. It's a blueprint. We're talking about solar, wind, geothermal, and yes, jobs for those same workers. You're talking about retraining program, infrastructure investment. This isn't about leaving anyone behind. It's about bringing everyone forward. The audience clapped, some enthusiastically, others more reserved, sensing the growing tension. Adam Schiff nodded slowly, his fingers steepled together in front of him, as if weighing her words, like a judge assessing legal testimony in a tense committee hearing. Then he leaned into the microphone with that low, deliberate voice Americans had come to recognize from televised hearings and somber press conferences. "Congresswoman," he said even, "I've seen a lot of blueprints in my time. Real polished, real ambitious. They look good until they meet the real world. You're talking about retraining folk. That's nice. But I've met rig workers down in Lake Charles who've been doing this their whole 30 years in steel-toed boots. They're not looking for a coding class or a government lifeline. They just want to know they won't wake up one day and find the ground's been ripped out from under them." His words hit home, a quiet rumble of applause breaking out from part of the crowd, especially those who saw him not as a firebrand, but as a policy-minded veteran who spoke with precision and empathy. AOC's eyes narrowed. Her smile stayed tight, but her voice didn't waver. "Mr. Schiff, this isn't about handouts. It's about opportunity. If we don't act now, those same workers you're talking about, they'll be left behind anyway. Not because we failed them, but because we refuse to move forward. We're not just fighting for today. We're fighting for the people who don't even have a voice in this room yet." The exchange was sharp, but still respectful. A duel of visions for 15 minutes. The debate followed a clear rhythm. She pushed for sweeping reform. He countered with measured realism. She spoke of what could be. He reminded her of what is. The room hung on their every word. Then Anderson Cooper shifted the gears. "Congresswoman, Mr. Schiff, there's growing concern that these energy debates ignore the human cost. From lost jobs in fossil fuel towns to the impact of climate disasters in vulnerable areas. How do your policies reflect the real lives of Americans?" AOC leaned in, her voice rising with the same fervor that had won her millions of followers. "This is why we need a new approach. Climate change doesn't hit Wall Street first. It hits the Bronx. It hits Jackson. It hits the reservations, the rural South. My plan puts those places first, not Silicon Valley. Justice is the foundation, not the afterthought." Cheers followed, loudest among the younger crowd, who saw in her a kind of moral compass. Adam tilted his head slightly, that unreadable calm never leaving his face. "Justice," he repeated slowly. "That's a powerful word, but let's get honest. Justice doesn't pay the rent. Justice doesn't put food in the fridge. A single mom in Shreveport, she's not looking for justice. She's looking for a home, a warm meal, a full plate for her kids. So, let's talk solutions, not slogans." Some in the audience murmured in agreement. Others shifted, uneasy. AOC's jaw tensed, her patience was fraying, her tone tightening. "Mr. Schiff, this isn't about slogans. It's about science and survival. We are out of time. If we don't invest in clean energy now, we're not just failing that mom in Shreveport. We're failing her kids, her grandkids, and everyone after." Applause exploded, but under the noise, tension crackled. Schiff's smile faded. Not in retreat, but in resolve. I'm not saying we stand still, he said. But if your solution means breaking communities just to say we move fast, then it's not a solution. It's a sacrifice. And where I come from, we don't leave people behind in the name of progress. The room stirred, a visible divide now cutting through the audience. And then, the moment everything changed, AOC leaned forward, her eyes locked onto Schiff with something sharper than policy, something personal. Mr. Schiff, she said, cool and unblinking, your approach clings to industries that are already on life support. Maybe it's time for certain people to step aside and let a new generation lead. A hush fell. Gasps fluttered through the studio. Adam Schiff remained motionless. His eyes never left hers. But AOC didn't stop. Sit down, boy, she said, her voice slicing through the air like a razor. A smirk danced at the corner of her mouth. The words landed like a thunderclap. The studio fell silent, the kind of silence that feels like time itself just stopped to listen. Anderson Cooper froze, his pen hovering mid-sentence. The audience sat frozen, some clutching their programs, others exchanging wide-eyed glances. In the CNN control room, producers scrambled over headsets, voices tense. Did she just say that? Someone whispered. Keep the cameras rolling, hissed another. Social media detonated within seconds. Hashtags like AOC versus Schiff and Sit Down Boy surged to the top of trending lists as millions across the country processed what had just happened. Some hailed it as a bold strike. Others saw it as a line-crossing insult. But nobody looked away. The word boy didn't just hang in the air. It weighed on it heavily. For Adam Schiff, a man who had spent a lifetime upholding law, questioning power, and speaking calmly through the storm, the word struck deeper than policy. Some of AOC's supporters in the audience burst into applause, taking it as a generational mic drop. But others, even among her fans, winced. There were things you said in a debate. And then, there was that. The camera zoomed in on Schiff. His face was still, calm, no anger, no outward reaction. His hands rested gently on the table. He didn't blink, didn't flinch. Instead, he turned his head slightly toward her, slowly, as if assessing not his opponent, but someone who had just unknowingly crossed a sacred line. The silence deepened, stretched, thick, electric. Anderson Cooper cleared his throat, trying to catch the moment before it exploded. Mr. Schiff, would you like to respond to the Congresswoman's point about generational leadership? But Adam Schiff didn't need prompting. He leaned forward, his voice low, deliberate, and steady. The voice of a man who had faced partisan firestorms and came out composed. Not because he didn't feel the heat, but because he knew how to control it. Congresswoman, he began, I've been called a lot of things in my life. In hearings, in editorials, in closed-door briefings and live broadcasts. But I've got to say, that's a new one. A few uneasy chuckles rippled through the crowd. Tension momentarily diffused, but Schiff's eyes never left hers. You want to talk about leadership? Let's talk, he continued, but not with cheap shots and throwaway lines. Let's talk with substance, with truth. AOC's smirk faltered, just for a moment. You see, leadership isn't about the loudest mic or the fastest tweet. It's not about who can cut deepest with their words. It's about who's willing to listen when it's uncomfortable. Who's willing to build something that lasts for everyone, not just for those who agree with you. He paused. Let that settle. His presence filling the room without ever raising his voice. Now you want to call me boy. Tell me to sit down. That's your prerogative. That's your prerogative. But I didn't come here to play games. I came here to talk about the things that keep this country running. Energy, use, dignity, and the people whose lives are on the line while we debate slogans. The crowd erupted. Applause surged across the room. Some for his restraint, others for the quiet thunder behind his words. AOC shifted slightly, still composed, still fierce, but there was a flicker, like she'd swung hard expecting a knockout, only to find her opponent hadn't just stood his ground. He'd absorbed the blow and thrown it back with weight. The cameras panned across the studio, capturing the reactions. A young woman in the front row clapped hard for AOC. An older man in a denim jacket nodded deeply at Schiff's words. A CNN producer whispered into a headset, "This is gold." Online, the moment fractured into 100 versions. Memes of Schiff's calm response, slow-motion replays of AOC's smirk. Debate raged in comment threads. Was this confidence or arrogance, dignity or deflection? But one thing was undeniable. This was no longer just a debate. This was about history, power, and the battle for who gets to define both. Anderson Cooper, trying to reel it all back in, cleared his throat again. Let's move to our next question. Specific policies for transitioning to renewable energy. But neither the audience nor the candidates were ready to move on. AOC, sensing the narrative slipping, leaned forward, eyes blazing. "Mr. Schiff, I'm not here to disrespect anyone, but I'm also not here to coddle outdated thinking. We need leaders who can face the future head-on, not cling to a past that's already gone." Adam Schiff adjusted his cuff, eyes calm once more. "Congresswoman," he said with a small, razor-sharp smile, "the future matters, but so does right now. And right now, folks out there aren't chasing slogans. They're chasing rent, food, heat. They're not asking for dreams on paper. They're asking for answers that work." This was about history, power, and the battle for who gets to define both. Anderson Cooper, trying to reel it all back in, cleared his throat again. Let's move to our next question. Specific policies for transitioning to renewable energy. But neither the audience nor the candidates were ready to move on. AOC, sensing the narrative slipping, leaned forward, eyes blazing. "Mr. Schiff, I'm not here to disrespect anyone, but I'm also not here to coddle outdated thinking. We need leaders who can face the future head-on, not cling to a past that's already gone." Schiff adjusted his cuff, eyes calm once more. "Congresswoman," he said with a small, razor-sharp smile, "the future matters, but so does right now. And right now, folks out there aren't chasing slogans. They're chasing rent, food, heat. They're not asking for dreams on paper. They're asking for answers that work." The crowd murmured again, tension thick in the air, the divide deepening as the debate barreled towards something more than policy. What happened next wouldn't just define the night. It would ripple far beyond the walls of the CNN studio. The sting of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's sit-down, "Boy" still echoed like a struck chord, vibrating in the bones of everyone present. The cameras captured it all in sharp clarity. Anderson Cooper's taut composure, AOC's defiant lean forward, and Adam Schiff's unwavering calm. He sat with his hands folded, motionless, his face composed like granite. But now there was a glint in his eyes, not anger, not offense, resolve, the kind that shifts the ground when it moves. The audience was split, half fired up by AOC's brashness, half disturbed by the line she'd crossed. But all of them leaned forward now, sensing it. Schiff was about to speak, and the energy in the room was about to turn. Social media remained ablaze. "Sit down, boy" still trended, but it now had company. Schiff responds, grace under fire. And people knew. They weren't just watching a debate anymore. They were watching a reckoning. Anderson Cooper cleared his throat, trying to restore order. "Mr. Schiff, let's return to the topic of energy policy. You've emphasized a practical transition to renewable. Can you outline what that actually looks like for states like Louisiana, where oil and gas play a major role?" It was a lifeline, an attempt to pull the conversation back to safer ground. But Schiff wasn't about to move on. Not yet. He adjusted his jacket cuff, gave the faintest of smiles, a razor-thin curve, and leaned toward the mic. "Anderson, I appreciate the question. And I'll get to policy, because that's what folks back home are wondering. How they're going to keep their lights on, keep their kids warm, and food on the table." He glanced sideways at AOC, who now sat with her arms folded tight, her posture still strong, but her focus sharpening. But before I get into kilowatts and carbon credits, let me say this. He turned fully now, voice calm, but with a measured weight behind every syllable. In my life, I've found that when someone starts reaching for insults instead of answers, it usually means they've run out of something to stand on. The audience broke into soft laughter, a tension-breaking ripple. But Schiff wasn't joking. His tone stayed even. Congresswoman, you want to lead? That's your call. But leadership, real leadership, isn't measured in decibels or retweets. It's measured in who you serve when nobody's looking. It's knowing that your ideas don't just live in speeches. They land in the lives of people who can't afford to wait for your version of the future. Applause surged louder now, rising from the older half of the audience, from working people who didn't see themselves in hashtags. AOC's jaw flexed, her eyes steady, but her breathing visible now. She was listening. She wasn't smiling anymore. Schiff leaned forward again, switching gears with grace. So, let's talk energy, with facts, not slogans. His voice picked up, not in volume, but in gravity. In Louisiana, we've got nearly 200,000 jobs tied to oil and gas. That's not numbers on a chart. That's welders, truckers, plant managers, men and women who have done the same job for 30 years and still show up before sunrise. No complaints. He didn't lecture. He connected. And the Congresswoman's Green New Deal. It sounds mighty nice on a college campus. But where's the part that tells a man with 2 kids how he keeps paying the mortgage while we wait for windmills and solar to scale up? Polite applause rippled, swelling into something more as the room leaned toward him. I'm all for clean air, clean water. I want that for my grandkids, too. But you can't tear down a bridge before you've built another one. That's not a plan. That's a fantasy. The line hit hard. A few younger viewers chuckled, but many others nodded, because truth spoken gently but firmly cuts deeper than volume. Schiff raised a hand. And here's the reality. The Energy Information Administration says oil and gas still power 60% of this country. Renewables? 12. That's not an opinion. That's arithmetic. You can't close that gap by 2030 with hashtags and hope. More claps. A shift in the room. AOC tapped her fingers lightly on the table. Not nervous, just calculating, watching him reshape the moment she thought she owned. Schiff closed in, not to win the argument, but to re-enter it. In my state, we're already working on clean energy, carbon capture, offshore wind, geothermal, but we're doing it the right way. Smart, deliberate, without gutting the very people we're supposed to lift. He looked straight at her now. For example, Cheniere Energy down in Cameron Parish is exporting liquefied natural gas, cleaner than coal, powering our allies overseas. That's security. That's how you move forward without leaving anyone behind. The room erupted again. Applause, whispers, respect. This wasn't just a response. It was a master class. He turned to AOC, his tone polite but unmistakably pointed. Congresswoman, Schiff said, his voice smooth as polished steel. Your plan calls for spending trillions. Some say 90 trillion over a decade. I'm curious, where exactly is that money coming from? And how do you explain to a refinery worker in Baton Rouge that his job's gone? But don't worry, there's a check in the mail? The question hung in the air. Heavy, sharp, unavoidable. Murmurs rolled across the crowd like distant thunder. Schiff leaned back in his chair, calm and unshaken. The image of quiet authority. He wasn't lashing out. He was laying a trap with velvet gloves. Anderson Cooper seized the pause to pivot. Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, your response. AOC leaned forward, voice steady, but now laced with urgency. The smirk from earlier was gone. In its place, conviction. Mr. Schiff, I hear you loud and clear. And yes, jobs matter. People's livelihoods matter. But let's not pretend the current system is working. Oil and gas may make up 60% of our energy today, but they're also driving the wildfires in California, the hurricanes pounding Louisiana, the floods that just shut down subways in New York. This isn't weather anymore. It's warning signs. The audience clapped, particularly younger members who saw her as the voice of bold change. My plan isn't about ending jobs, she pressed on, voice rising. It's about replacing them. The Green New Deal funds job training, builds infrastructure, and invests directly in communities like Baton Rouge, communities already hit hardest by pollution, storms, and neglect. The words hit, but not without resistance. Schiff's earlier grounding had made the crowd more cautious. The applause came, but it was tempered. And about that $90 trillion number, she added, turning toward Schiff. That's not a fact. That's fear. Independent estimates, like one from the American Action Forum, put it closer to $50 trillion over years. And that includes savings from avoiding climate collapse. We fund it like we fund anything else. Tax wealth hoarding, close loopholes, and stop pretending we can't afford to save our future. Another round of applause, though lighter than before. Doubt had crept into some corners of the room. Schiff tilted his head slightly, smile faint but knowing. Congresswoman, he said, I respect your ambition. I do, but $50 trillion, that's still a mountain no matter how you slice it. And those same reports you are quoting, they also say millions of jobs could be lost before those new ones ever show up. He leaned forward, voice quieting slightly, forcing the audience to lean in. Folks, in my state, they don't have time to wait for billionaires to be taxed someday so they can maybe get retrained. They need certainty, not promises. They need a paycheck next month, not policy theory next decade. Applause broke out again, this time louder, more grounded. It was the sound of reality resonating. AOC's eyes flashed, her patience thinning. Mr. Schiff, certainty, she shot back. The only thing certain with your approach is more pollution, more disasters, more delay. The world is already moving. China's investing billions in solar. Europe's phasing out coal. If we don't lead, we'll be left behind. Schiff nodded, almost conceding the global shift. But his reply was swift, his timing surgical. China, he said, eyebrow raised. China's building coal plants faster than they're building solar panels. In Europe, they're dealing with sky-high energy prices because they jumped too fast without a real backup. He leaned in again. Now, I'm all for leading, but let's not lead ourselves off a cliff. The crowd burst into reaction, some cheering, some murmuring, but every eye was locked on the stage. It was a masterclass in contrast, her fire against his focus, her urgency against his grounded caution. Sensing she might be losing momentum, AOC shifted strategy. Senator, she said, this isn't just about numbers. It's about values. Do we value profits over people? The past over the future? Your plan feels like it's stuck in a time where ignoring science was still an option. The crowd stirred again. Some cheered her clarity, others bristled. Schiff didn't flinch, but his voice took on a firmer edge now. Not raised, just more resolute. Values, he said, tone sharpening like a clean blade. I value the folks who keep this country running. The ones who drill, refine, haul, and work with their hands. The ones who pay taxes while Washington writes billion-dollar bills with their names missing from the fine print. He paused just a beat. And science? I believe in it. But science doesn't pay the rent when your job's gone. And the future doesn't feed your family when someone in D.C. just made your industry disappear. Thunderous applause exploded across the room, the loudest of the night. It wasn't just agreement. It was identification. AOC's jaw tightened. Her composure held, but her earlier confidence now had cracks. She opened her mouth to respond, but Anderson Cooper jumped in, his instincts sharp. Let's take a brief pause and move on to our next question. The cameras panned across the room. Some audience members stood, applauding Schiff with reverence. Others nodded solemnly in support of AOC. But either way, no one looked away. In the CNN control room, producers whispered to each other with wide eyes. This is it, one said, watching the ratings spike in real time. This is the moment. The debate had turned into wildfire. social media dissecting every word, every glance. But even through the chaos, it was clear. Adam Schiff had reclaimed the narrative. He didn't shout. He didn't flinch. He turned AOC's insult into something else entirely. An opportunity to remind the country that dignity isn't loud. It's lasting. Still, AOC wasn't finished. She came back swinging, linking clean energy to justice, painting a future of solar panels and retrofitted homes. She spoke of asthma in the Bronx, flooded subways, storm-ravaged streets, and she challenged Schiff once more. "How can you claim to fight for the working class," she asked, "when your policies chain them to a dying industry?" The crowd erupted, half inspired, half unsettled. Then Schiff leaned in. "I don't defend industries," he said. "I defend people." And he told the story of Marcus, a welder from Lake Charles who's worked rigs for 25 years. A man who shows up early, leaves late, and isn't asking for a handout. Just a future he can count on. "You say we need change," Schiff said. "Fine, but change without a plan. That's not progress. That's a gamble." The studio buzzed. Then he delivered the blow. "You keep talking about clean energy jobs. Name one, just one, funded, approved, ready to hire Marcus in the next 6 months." AOC hesitated. "There are projects in development." "Working on," Schiff cut in, calm, firm. "Folks like Marcus can't pay bills with working on." The crowd exploded. Applause. Thunderous. A moment, a line, a shift. Anderson Cooper, seeing the temperature spike, stepped in to cool the fire. "Let's move to closing thoughts." AOC took a breath. Her voice was steady, but softer now. "My plan isn't perfect, but it's necessary. I believe in building something where no one is left behind. We can't let fear hold us back. The future's worth the fight." Polite applause. Her passion was real, but the room had changed. Then Cooper turned to Schiff. He didn't look at AOC. He looked directly into the camera, like he was speaking to America itself. "This isn't just about energy," he said. "It's about how we treat each other when the cameras are off." He paused. "I believe in oil. I believe in wind. I believe in solar. I believe in innovation. I believe in people. The ones keeping this country running. Right now. Not later. Not maybe. Now." The crowd leaned in. "We don't move forward by shouting each other down. We move forward by listening. And we don't need perfect ideas. We need workable ones." Then he turned to AOC, not as an opponent, but as a partner in the bigger struggle. "You've got fire, Congresswoman," he said, "but fire without focus. It burns more than it builds. Let's use both. Fire and wisdom. That's how we fix this." Applause. Not divided, not forced, unified. As the show wrapped, something unexpected happened. AOC reached across the stage. "Senator," she said quietly, "we disagree, but I respect the fight." Schiff shook her hand. "Keep pushing," he said. "Just make sure you're listening too." The moment, brief, human, raw, went viral in seconds. AOC Schiff began trending. It wasn't about victory anymore. It was about something bigger. Mutual respect in a time of fracture. Anderson Cooper closed the debate. Tonight wasn't about solving everything. It was about starting something. The final shot. A divided nation watching. Maybe for the first time actually hearing each other. The clash between Schiff's experience and AOC's urgency had revealed something rare. That truth and change don't have to be enemies. The debate ended, but the conversation, it had just begun.